I thought nightmares couldn't leave the mind until I saw mine drawn on paper by a boy I barely knew. I'm Dr. Evan Mercer, a pediatric neurologist at St. Augustine Medical in Ohio. Wednesday nights are my slow nights, wind rattling the old window frames, monitors chirping like restless birds, the hallway lights dimmed to save electricity, and I suppose courage. I was finishing notes on a seizure workup when Nurse Carla buzzed my desk. Room 417, new admission, 9-year-old male, night terrors. Mom says he draws after each episode. Night terrors are common, but parents rarely use the word with the tightness in her voice. I walked the hall, counting my steps out of habit 12 to the ice machine, 3 to the maintenance door that never closes fully, 20 to 417. The corridor smelled like ethanol and orange cleaner, but underneath it, something sweet and stale, like a forgotten apple in a locker. Inside 417, the boy named Tag, Milo, sat cross-legged on the bed, 4 taped to a bony hand, a hospital pencil clutched so hard his nails were white. His mother, Dara, stood by the window. She had that broken posture look I knew too well, the way grief leans on people before grief actually happens. "Hi, Milo," I said softly. "I'm Dr. Mercer. I hear you're an artist." He didn't look up, just kept sketching in short, urgent strokes that sounded like someone scratching at a door. I pulled up a chair. "Can you tell me what you're drawing?" "He says he doesn't remember the dreams," Dara whispered. "He wakes up screaming, and then he draws. We've seen specialists. They all say he'll grow out of it." "Maybe he will," I said, and felt the lie settle on my tongue like dust. "But we'll get some answers." I asked about family history, head trauma, fevers. Nothing remarkable. She slid me a folder older drawings, a tangle of graphite and shadows. I flipped, half listening to the HVAC thump in the ceiling, and froze on the 8th page. A hallway, narrow, with light pooling in uneven ovals along the floor. On the left, a door with paint peeling in strips, and on the right, a window that shouldn't be there, because in my dream, there was never a window, and yet the feeling was the same. The pressure, the listening darkness. At the far end stood a figure with a blank oval for a face, hands hanging too long at its sides. I had never told anyone about that hallway. Not my father when I woke screaming at 11, not the therapist I saw in residency after a child coded on my watch. I'd learned to live with it, the way one lives with a scar under a shirt. It belonged to me. It should not have belonged to Milo. When did he draw this one? I kept my voice level. 2 nights ago, Dara said. He said the man was closer this time. I slid the page back into the folder, palms damp. We'll admit him for overnight monitoring, EEG, pulse ox, video. I turned to Milo. Buddy, I'm going to put little stickers on your head later, like spaceship sensors. It won't hurt. He finally looked up. His eyes were the gray-green of a storm. He doesn't like cameras, he said. Who? The tall man, he whispered, and the pencil tip snapped. I didn't let my face move. Kids pick up fear like radio stations. Good news, I said lightly. Most tall men don't like hospitals either. Carla helped me arrange the overnight. As we taped the first electrodes, Milo flinched only once when a siren wailed in the street below. He kept glancing at the door, then at the corner of the room where the wall met the ceiling in a hairline crack. I taped one more lead and saw the faintest tremor in his eyelids rem like too soon. Sleep deprivation tonight? Carla murmured. Let him nap in cycles, I said. We'll provoke if needed at 2 a.m. At 11:47 p.m., the room was quiet, except for the whisper of the oxygen concentrator in 418 and the cough of a janitor somewhere on 5. I sat at the monitoring station just outside, the screens bathing my hands in cold light. Milo's EEG drew placid waves. His heart rate idled at 76. I wrote a note about parasomnia patterns and tried not to think about the drawing in my pocket, its paper heat against my thigh. At 12:02, the hallway lights flickered. That happens in old buildings. The monitor array wavered and stabilized. On Milo's video feed, the room looked normal. Boy under thin blanket, mother dozing in the chair, the corner crack a harmless line in the paint. But the audio picked up a soft sound, like a coat brushing plaster. I leaned in. "Carla, you hear that?" She stepped beside me, eyes on the waveforms. "Could be HVAC." The sound came again, closer, a whisper scrape that made my teeth ache. On the feed, Milo stirred. His fingers reached under the pillow and came back with the hospital pencil. He sat up, eyes open, but not seeing classic parasomnia. The EEG didn't spike. No seizure. He pulled his chart from the bedside tray and began to draw with frantic, sure strokes. "Is he awake?" Carla asked. "Yes and no," I said. Dara roused, touched his shoulder. "Honey?" Milo didn't react. He drew a door, then a hall, then a man at the end of it, long hands, blank face. Stroke after stroke, the figure lengthened, as if walking toward him on the page. My hands went cold. On the audio, the whisper scrape moved from the hallway to somewhere I couldn't name, like the room itself had lungs. The lights overhead flickered once, twice, and on the video feed, I will swear to this, something darkened the top right corner where the crack lived, as if a shadow stepped into a smaller shadow to try it on. Milo stopped drawing. He turned his head slowly toward the camera, and for 1 second, his eyes focused. He was looking at me through the lens. His lips shaped a single word. "Run." Milo's lips formed that word, and even though no sound carried through the feed, I felt it hit me like a slap. Run. I leaned back in the chair, my pulse hammering so hard that I heard it in my ears. Carla frowned at me. "What did he say?" "Nothing," I lied, but my throat had gone dry. Probably just dream babble. On the monitor, Milo's pencil dropped. His hand hung midair like a puppet with its strings cut. Dara touched his wrist, panic tightening her voice. "Evan, something's wrong. He's not moving." I grabbed my stethoscope and went inside. The smell struck me first, the faint metallic tang of ozone, like the air after a lightning strike. Milo's chest rose and fell, but his eyes were open, pupils huge and dark. They didn't track me, not even when I leaned close. "Buddy, can you hear me?" I asked, snapping my fingers. Nothing. The EEG still streamed calm, unremarkable waves. No seizure activity, no hypoxia. Neurologically, he looked awake, but awareness wasn't there. And then I saw the drawing. It wasn't just a hallway anymore. He'd filled nearly the whole page with a door, a warped thing with hinges bent outward, as if something had tried to force its way through. Jagged lines radiated around the frame, pencil strokes so deep the paper tore. Dara clutched his shoulder. "He's never done this. Evan, what's happening to him?" I forced my voice steady. "Parasomnia episode. He's safe. Let's not touch him too much." Inside, though, my thoughts were unraveling. Parasomnia didn't explain his pupils. Didn't explain the smell in the air. Didn't explain why my own chest felt tight, like pressure was building in the room. Behind me, Carla whispered, "Doctor, look." The crack in the corner above the bed seemed wider, jagged. Shadows pooled there, darker than the rest of the room, bending wrong against the fluorescent light. I blinked, but it didn't fade. I had to focus. I checked his vitals. Heart rate steady, oxygen 99. Nothing emergent. I told myself to breathe, to ground in medicine, not imagination. And then Milo spoke. Not in a child's voice, but low, guttural like a throat unused to words. Not yours anymore. Dara recoiled, gasping. That's not my son's voice. My skin went ice cold. We'll keep monitoring, I said, though my hand shook against the stethoscope. As if in response, Milo's hand lifted the pencil again. He didn't look at the page. His eyes were locked on the ceiling crack. But his strokes were deliberate. When I glanced down, my breath stalled. He was sketching me. Same lab coat, same tired eyes, but behind my drawn figure stood the tall man, faceless, hands like ropes dangling too long. Carla muttered, "Jesus Christ." I couldn't speak. My nightmare had left my skull and crawled onto paper through the hands of a boy I'd just met. The lights flickered once more. The monitor beeped. Milo's E spiked, a jagged burst across the screen like static. He dropped the pencil and collapsed against the pillow, unconscious. Dara screamed, and from the corner above the bed, I swear I heard it. The slow drag of something shifting inside the walls, waiting for the door to open. Milo lay unconscious, chest rising evenly, as if nothing had happened. His mother wept into her hands, and Carla whispered a prayer under her breath. I forced myself to act like a doctor, to be the anchor in the storm. I checked his pulse strong. Pupils still dilated, but reactive. Oxygen saturation held. By all medical standards, he was stable. But medicine couldn't explain the shadow in the ceiling corner, or the sound that seemed to crawl beneath the paint. I lowered the rails of the bed, murmuring to Dara, "He's okay for now. We'll keep him here under observation." She clutched his limp hand like it was the last rope keeping her from drowning. On the floor, the drawing stared back at me. My own likeness, hunched under the faceless figure's shadow, pencil lines so dark they looked burned into the page. I bent to pick it up, and for a moment, just a fraction of a second, I swore the graphite shimmered, like heat rising off asphalt. Carla touched my shoulder. "Evan, are you seeing?" "No," I said too quickly. I folded the paper and slid it into my coat pocket. "It's just a drawing." She didn't argue, but the look in her eyes told me she didn't believe me. At 1:12 a.m., the monitor beeped, signaling movement. Milo stirred, his fingers twitching. Dara held her breath. I leaned in close as his eyelids fluttered open. "Milo?" His lips moved soundlessly. Then, barely audible, "The door. It's open now." A chill spread up my spine. "What door, buddy?" He turned his head toward the ceiling crack, and though his gaze was unfocused, I felt the weight of it. I followed his eyes. The crack had widened, jagged plaster crumbling, dust sifting down like dry snow. For an insane moment, I thought I saw wood grain behind it, like the outline of an actual door buried in the wall. "Carla," I whispered, "get maintenance up here." She picked up the phone, hands shaking, but the line spat static and died. She tried again, dead. Dara stood, clutching Milo's chart to her chest. "Evan, I don't care about maintenance. What's happening to my son?" Before I could answer, Milo's monitor screamed. His heart rate spiked to 160. The EEG went wild, not seizure activity, not anything I recognized, just chaos. Jagged lines like an earthquake tearing through the screen. And then every other monitor on the floor, every room, every patient lit up in unison, alarms shrieking down the hall. I bolted to the doorway, heart pounding. Room after room blinked red with alerts, like the entire ward had flatlined at once. But when I glanced through the windows, the patients were still, silent, unbothered. Only Milo was thrashing now, his small frame bucking against the sheets. Dara screamed his name. Carla tried to hold him, but he was stronger than he should have been. His head jerked back, and he gasped a single word. "Closer." The fluorescent lights above us exploded with a sharp pop, showering sparks. Darkness swallowed the ward. And in the blackness, from the corner crack, came the sound of a door creaking slowly open. The darkness pressed down like a weight, broken only by the weak glow of the monitors. Carla's gasp cut through the silence. Dara clung to Milo's bed, her sobs sharp and panicked. My first instinct was to reach for the emergency flashlight clipped to my coat. My hand shook so badly, I almost dropped it when I clicked it on. The beam sliced across the room, landing on the crack above Milo's bed. My heart seized. The fissure wasn't just wider, it bulged outward, plaster flaking like dry skin. And there, beneath the crumbling surface, was unmistakable wood. Panels. A frame. The shape of a door, hidden inside the hospital wall. That wasn't there before, Carla whispered. It's old construction, I forced out, though the lie burned in my throat. Water damage, settling. But no water damage creaked like hinges. Milo thrashed again, eyes fluttering under closed lids. His voice rasped, guttural. He's coming through. Dara shrieked. Who? Who is he? She looked at me as though I had the answer, as though my degree and lab coat meant I could explain why her son was speaking with someone else's voice. I turned back to the wall. The flashlight beam wavered as the plaster split further, a jagged seam zigzagging down to the baseboard. Dust spilled onto the tile floor. Then the sound came, a slow, deliberate knock. Once, twice, 3 times. My throat closed. I'd heard that sound before in my own dreams, pounding on the hallway door I could never reach. Carla staggered back, clutching her rosary. Evan, this isn't medical. This is... Don't say it, I snapped, sharper than I meant. I couldn't let her voice it, saying it would make it real. The monitors wailed, shrill alarms bouncing down the empty corridor. I glanced out. Every room's lights flickered in unison, a strobe of chaos, but not a single patient stirred. The entire floor was frozen, except here. I turned back to Milo. His small hand rose, trembling, and pointed toward the wall. His eyes were still shut, but his voice was clear. Open it. The crack split with a violent snap, plaster chunks scattering across the floor. For one breathless second, I swore I saw fingers long, too many knuckles curling around the edge of the door that should not exist. I yanked Dara back, shouting at Carla, "Get security now." Carla bolted into the hall, her footsteps swallowed by the howling alarms. I tightened my grip on Milo's bedrail, trying to keep my own legs from giving out. Dara clung to my sleeve, sobbing into my coat. From behind the wall came a voice, muffled, scraping, the sound of stone grinding against bone. "Doctor," it whispered. And it was my name it spoke. When the voice slithered through the crack, wrapping my name in a rasp that scraped like nails on glass, every nerve in my body rebelled. "Dr. Mercer." The syllables dragged out, thick with malice, as if it savored each letter. Dara's fingers dug into my sleeve. "Evan, it knows you." Her eyes were wide, frantic, searching my face for reassurance I didn't have. I forced steel into my voice. "Stay behind me." My flashlight beam quivered over the widening seam. Dust rained from the ceiling tiles, coating my tongue with chalk. Another knock harder this time. The wall bulged. A panel of plaster split, exposing more of the door. Warped wood, veins of rot, metal hinges black with age. It looked ancient, as though the hospital had been built around it. But I knew better. That door didn't belong to this building. It belonged to me. For years I'd run that hallway in my dreams, chased by the faceless figure. I'd slam a door behind me, heart in my throat, and always wait before it burst through. I thought it was nothing but nightmare residue, a trick of a stressed mind. Now it was here, clawing its way into the waking world through a 9-year-old boy's hospital wall. Milo stirred, sweat soaking his hair. His lips parted. "He's almost through." "Don't listen," I whispered, though the words were as much for me as for Dara. From the ceiling speakers came a crackle, then a warped distortion. The hospital intercom. But instead of the usual metallic voice announcing codes, there was only heavy breathing, deep and wet, then the same rasping whisper. "Evan." "Open the door." I staggered back. The intercom wasn't connected to this room. It echoed down the hall, rattling through every corner of the ward. Carla's voice suddenly broke in, shouting from the corridor. "Security's not answering. The phones are all dead." Before I could reply, the monitors shrieked again, every patient's vitals spiking wildly. On the feed outside, screens showed heart rates soaring, oxygen plummeting. Yet when I glimpsed through windows, the patient still lay motionless, serene, as if the machines were lying. No, not lying. Warning. The knock came again, loud enough to rattle the IV stand. A fissure split the doorframe wide, wood groaning. Milo sat bolt upright. His eyes were open now, pupils so wide they swallowed his irises. He turned to me, voice his own this time, small and terrified. "Doctor, if he comes through, he'll take you first." The overhead lights flared, blinding white, then burst in a rain of sparks. And in that stuttering glow, I saw a hand push through the gap-long fingers bending wrong, skin stretched too thin, reaching for me. The hand groped through the crack, pale and waxy, fingers bending like joints carved in the wrong places. The nails scraped against plaster, leaving deep grooves in the wall. I froze, my flashlight beam catching the stretch of skin, pulled so thin I could see veins writhing underneath. Dara shrieked, pulling Milo tight against her. He whimpered, his chest rising too fast. "Don't let him out," he begged, his voice trembling but lucid. I wanted to move, to grab something heavy, to stop whatever was pushing through, but my body locked. My dream had never gone this far. I'd always woken before the door opened. Now I was wide awake, and the nightmare was still writing itself. The hand flexed, each finger twitching independently, like they were testing the air. One nail yellow, curved like a claw, snagged the corner of Milo's bedsheet and dragged it slowly toward the door. That broke my paralysis. I grabbed the 4-pole, ripping it from its base with a screech of metal. Raising it like a spear, I slammed it against the intruding hand. The sound that followed was not human. A wet, guttural howl vibrated through the walls, rattling the ceiling tiles. The hand recoiled violently, vanishing behind the crack. Plaster rained down in chunks. Carla stumbled back into the room, panting. "Evan, what the hell was that?" "Don't ask," I barked, lowering the pole. My hands trembled around the cold metal. "Just help me keep them safe." The monitors outside screamed again, but inside our room, Milo's EEG flatlined for just a second, before spiking with impossible activity. The screen filled with patterns, jagged waves looping back on themselves. Then I realized they weren't random. The EEG was drawing. Across the monitor, lines sketched the outline of the same hallway, the same faceless figure I had carried in my nightmares. It was as if Milo's brain itself had become the canvas. Carla clutched her chest. "That's Evan. That's not possible. Machines don't." "Stop," I said, my throat tight. "Just stop." Dara whimpered, rocking Milo's limp body. He stirred faintly, his lips forming words around shallow breaths. "He's angry. He wants the doctor." My skin went cold. Then the intercom crackled again, louder this time, the voice almost gleeful. "Let me through, Evan." And the door in the wall groaned, its wooden frame splintering as if something massive was forcing its way into our world. The sound of the door straining filled the room, a low moan of wood tearing against its frame. Plaster chunks fell like brittle snow, scattering across the tile. Dara screamed, clutching Milo tighter, while Carla pressed herself flat against the wall, her rosary slipping between her fingers. I raised the 4-pole again, though my arms felt useless against something that shouldn't exist. "Stay back," I ordered, my voice shaking. I wasn't even sure who I was speaking to, my staff, the mother, the boy, or the thing pushing through. The fissure widened, jagged edges revealing more of that impossible door. Hinges groaned like rusted iron dragged from the grave. Something slammed against the other side, once, twice, the impact making the fluorescent fixtures overhead shudder violently. Milo's eyes snapped open. They were his own this time, small and human, but filled with horror. "You can't let him in," he whispered. "He's been waiting for you." My blood ran cold. "For me? Why me?" His lips trembled. "Because you left him there." Before I could demand what that meant, the intercom screeched alive, filling the ward with distorted static. Then the whisper came, stretched into something almost tender. "Evan, you promised me." Every muscle in my body seized. That phrase, I knew it. I had heard it once before, in a dream that had haunted me since childhood. In that endless hallway, when the faceless man drew near, sometimes he spoke those exact words before I woke up drenched in sweat. I thought I'd imagined it. I thought nightmares couldn't follow you into the waking world. I was wrong. The doorframe cracked louder, splinters flying across the room. One piece embedded in the floor like a dagger. Dara sobbed hysterically, shielding Milo with her body. Carla muttered prayers in rapid succession, eyes squeezed shut. The alarms across the ward peaked, then suddenly cut out. Silence fell. A heavy, unnatural silence, as if the whole hospital were holding its breath. Then 3 deliberate knocks. I lowered the 4-pole, realizing I was shaking so badly it would do nothing. My heart hammered as I stepped toward the wall, flashlight trembling in my grip. The knocks came again, louder, closer. And then, in the stale stillness, I heard it not through the intercom, not through the walls, but inside my own head. "Open the door, Evan, or I'll open you." The voice slid through my skull like a knife, too close to be outside. I staggered back, clutching my temples, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly across the cracked wall. Dara whimpered behind me, rocking Milo as if her embrace alone could shield him. Carla whispered a frantic Hail Mary, each word sharp as broken glass. The wood groaned again. A splintered edge jutted out into the room, and I could see a sliver of blackness behind it, thick, like tar, not just empty space. The air stank of rot and damp earth, a smell that had no place in a sterile hospital. Milo stirred in his mother's arms. His eyelids fluttered, then his lips parted. His voice came in gasps, but the words were clear. "He won't stop unless you make a trade." I crouched low, gripping his small hand. "A trade? What do you mean, Milo?" His eyes rolled back, pupils vanishing. The voice that came from him wasn't his own. It was deeper, ancient, reverberating through the thin walls of my sanity. "You know the get, Doctor." Dara screamed, covering her son's ears, though the sound came from his own throat. "Stop it. Stop talking through him." I shook my head violently, refusing to let it settle into me. "There is no debt," I snapped, though the words tasted false. My dreams, no. My memories whispered otherwise. The voice laughed, a hollow sound that made the fluorescent tubes rattle in their sockets. "You closed the door once. You left me there. Now let me out, or I'll take the boy instead." Milo jerked, body convulsing, as if invisible strings pulled him taut. His mother clutched him tighter, shrieking his name. "Evan, do something." Carla cried, her back pressed to the wall, her face white with terror. I stepped toward the widening fissure, my whole body shaking. My nightmares rushed back. That hallway, the endless pounding, my child self screaming as something clawed at the locked door. I had slammed it shut. I had run. But what if? What if by shutting it, I'd trapped something in with me? Or worse, locked something out that had always been trying to follow. The knocking stopped. Silence, heavy and deliberate, filled the room. Then, through the crack, a single eye appeared, featureless and gray, lidless, as if carved from smoke. It fixed on me with unblinking hunger. "Choose," the voice rasped. "You or the boy?" Dara's sobs turned to a low wail, rocking Milo's limp body. Carla's rosary beads clattered to the floor. And I, paralyzed, drenched in sweat, realized the nightmare wasn't asking. It was giving me an ultimatum. Me or him. The eye in the crack did not blink. It didn't need to. Its gaze held me the way a hook holds, flesh-piercing, merciless. My breath came shallow, fogging the beam of the flashlight as if the air itself had turned cold. "You," the voice pressed, low and resonant, "or the boy." Dara's nails dug into her son's thin arms. "No," she sobbed. "Don't listen to it. He's just a child, please, doctor. Don't let it take him." Carla's voice trembled as she edged toward me. "Evan, what does it want? Why you?" I swallowed hard. My tongue felt like sandpaper. "Because." My voice cracked. "Because I've seen it before." Carla's face went pale. Dara stared at me with raw disbelief. "What are you saying?" I forced myself to continue, the words scraping out like broken glass. "When I was a kid, I dreamed of this hallway. The door, the figure. Night after night, it chased me. And one night, I shut the door on it. I locked it out. But I think," my voice faltered as the wood creaked, splinters scattering across the tile, "I think I locked it in." The eye glistened with a wet shimmer, unblinking. A hand pushed through again, its fingers bending wrong, knuckles cracking with each flex. It reached for me, for the space between us, the smell of rot thickening with every inch. Milo convulsed in Dara's arms, his back arching unnaturally. His small hands clawed at the air as if resisting unseen chains. His scream tore through the room, not his own voice, but two voices layered, child and monster, harmonizing in horror. "Choose." The force of it rattled the monitors, sent the four-pole clanging against the wall. I dropped to my knees beside Milo, gripping his shoulders, desperate. "Fight it, kid. Stay with me. Don't let him in." His eyes snapped open, pure black now, swallowing all light. The whisper slithered through his lips. "He will take me, unless you come back with him." My stomach turned, back, to that hallway, to the nightmare. The eye fixed on me, and for the first time, I felt it smile without a mouth. "Open the door, Evan. Step through. Settle your debt." The crack widened one last time, a jagged grin of splintered wood. Beyond it was not drywall or brick, but a pulsing darkness, endless, patient, hungry. And I knew if I stepped through, I might never return. But if I didn't, Milo would be gone, forever. My hand rose, trembling, toward the fractured frame. Behind me, Dara screamed. "Don't you dare leave him," Carla whispered. "Dear God, what are you doing?" And I whispered back to no one but myself. I think I already chose a long time ago. My hand hovered inches from the splintered frame. The air leaking through the crack wasn't just cold, it pulsed like breath. Each inhale smelled of rot. Each exhale carried whispers I couldn't quite decipher. They brushed against my skin like cobwebs. Milo writhed in his mother's arms, his body caught between seizure and possession. Dara's sobs shook the bed. "Please, doctor, please save him." Her voice cracked into something primal, the sound of a mother begging the universe not to take her child. Carla clutched the rosary so hard, the beads cut into her palms. "Evan, don't. You don't know what's in there." But I did. I knew too well. The hallway from my nightmares stretched beyond the crack, dimly lit by pools of sickly light. I could almost hear the echo of my childhood footsteps, the pounding of my younger self running barefoot on endless stone floors, chased by the faceless figure. I had shut the door then, slammed it closed, left it behind. But nightmares never die, they wait. The eye blinked now, impossibly slow, a film of gray sliding across it. The voice seeped from the fissure like smoke. "Step through, Evan. Your debt or his soul?" Milo convulsed violently. His small mouth opened, and in the black void of his throat, I heard two words echo. "Help me." I couldn't breathe. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else as I rose. The flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor and rolling until its beam shone straight into the widening crack. The doorframe yawned wider, impossibly wide now, big enough for me to step through. Beyond lay that cursed hallway, stretching on without end. I turned to Dara, to Carla. "If I don't, he dies." My own voice startled me flat, resigned, like I'd already crossed the threshold in my mind. Carla shook her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "Evan, you'll never come back." Maybe she was right. Maybe that was the point. I took one last look at Milo. His tiny fingers clawed weakly at the air, reaching for me. His eyes still black gleamed with a desperate plea. "Hold on, buddy," I whispered. "I'm not leaving you." I stepped forward. My foot crossed the jagged frame. The world tilted, stretching, the hospital dissolving like smoke. Behind me, Dara screamed my name, her voice shredded by terror. Carla cried out a prayer, words lost in the roar that followed. And then I was inside. The hallway stretched before me, just as I remembered. Endless stone, flickering pools of yellow light, walls sweating with damp. And at the far end, the faceless man waited. This time, he didn't chase. This time, he was smiling without a mouth. The hospital was gone. The stink of antiseptic and ozone replaced by damp stone, mildew, and something far older, metallic like blood, left to rust. The floor beneath my shoes was slick, uneven. The lights overhead flickered in sickly yellow patches, too dim to banish the shadows. And there he stood, the faceless man. He was taller than memory allowed, his head brushing the ceiling, his hands dangling too long, swaying like pendulums. Where a face should have been, there was only an oval of shifting gray, like smoke pressed flat. But I knew he was smiling. I could feel it radiating from that blank expanse. "You came back," the voice rasped, though his shape never moved. It reverberated through the stone walls, through my chest, through the marrow of my bones. I swallowed hard, every instinct screaming to turn and run, but behind me there was no door, no hospital, no Milo, just endless hallway. I was trapped here again. "What do you want with him?" My voice cracked, echoing down the corridor. "He's just a boy." The figure tilted his head, jerky, like a puppet tugged by invisible strings. "Not the boy, never the boy, you." "Then take me." I forced the words out, steady as I could. "Leave him." The faceless man took one slow step forward. His footfalls echoed like hammers, so eager now. "But you shut me out once, little doctor. You left me behind. I was a child," I snapped. "I didn't understand." A guttural laugh rolled through the hallway, vibrating the damp stone. Children see more clearly than grown men. "You knew enough to run. You knew enough to fear." His arms lifted, joints popping like breaking branches. The hallway groaned with the movement, the walls trembling. "Now you will finish what you began." The door was never closed, Evan, only delayed. A low moan rose from the stone itself, like the entire place was alive and suffering. My stomach knotted. I thought of Milo, convulsing in his mother's arms, of Dara's tears, of Carla's whispered prayers. They were still out there if this was real. Then what happened here mattered. My hands balled into fists. If you want me, you've got me, but I won't let you touch him. The figure's head snapped to the side with a crack. The voice deepened until it shook the marrow of my bones. Then you must walk the hallway. The floor beneath me stretched, doubling, tripling, pulling the figure farther away, though he never moved. The lights above flickered violently, plunging whole sections into darkness. And then I heard footsteps behind me, soft, dragging, like something crawling out of the black. I wasn't alone in here anymore. The footsteps behind me scraped closer, wet and uneven, like something dragging itself along stone. I turned, flashlight trembling in my hand, only to realize it was gone. I hadn't brought it here. Light came only from the sickly, flickering pools above, leaving gaps of darkness where anything could hide. I couldn't see what followed, but I could hear it. A shuffling breath, a faint rattle, like bones knocking together. Ahead, the faceless man waited, still as a monument. The distance between us never closed, no matter how many steps I took. The hallway stretched like elastic, mocking me. "You cannot reach me," the voice murmured, though his form didn't move. "You can only walk. And the longer you walk, the more you leave behind." Milo, Dara, Carla, the hospital, my life. With every step forward, I felt them slipping, like sand through my fingers. I stopped, my chest heaved, sweat slicking my palms. If this is my punishment, I growled into the dark, then take me. But let him go. The faceless man tilted his head, impossibly sharp. Sacrifice. The word vibrated through the stone. One soul for another. Always the bargain. I closed my eyes, trying to ground myself. I remembered Milo's small hand gripping mine, the storm in his green-gray eyes. He was only 9. He hadn't asked for this. I had. I was the one who shut the door as a child, the one who left this thing festering in the dark. "I accept," I whispered, throat raw. "Take me instead." The footsteps behind me stopped. The air went still. For a moment, the hallway was silent except for the pulse in my ears. Then the faceless man stretched his arms wide, the walls groaning with the movement. So be it. The ground split beneath me. Stone fractured into a jagged maw, and blackness yawned wide, swallowing the faint light. I felt myself tipping, falling into the abyss. Behind me, the voice shifted, layered now with something softer, smaller, Milo's voice. "Thank you, Doctor." The last thing I saw before the dark consumed me was the faceless figure lowering its head, as though in reverence or triumph. And then there was nothing. Only silence. Only endless black.